Los Angeles, the city of angels, a place known for Hollywood dreams, sunshine, and fame. But in the mid-1970s, something darker crept through its streets, something hidden just beneath the glittering surface. Deep in the heart of Skid Row, among the forgotten and the desperate, a predator hunted his prey. His victims were the invisible ones, homeless, elderly men attacked while they slept. Throats slashed, blood drained, bodies positioned like offerings in a ritual. Police were baffled. The press dubbed him the Skid Row Slasher. And then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished. A decade would pass. The city would change. But the darkness hadn't left, it was waiting. And when the killings started again, investigators realized this wasn't over, not even close. This is the story of Vaughn Greenwood, a man obsessed with ritual, driven by madness and protected for years by society's indifference to its most vulnerable. This is the story of the Skid Row Slasher, and how one of the most horrifying serial killers in Los Angeles history nearly disappeared into the shadows forever. In the late 1960s, Los Angeles was a city divided. On the surface, it sparkled with wealth, movie stars, and the promise of fame. But just blocks away from the red carpets and palm trees was a stretch of streets known as Skid Row, a place most people avoided. It was a patch of the city that swallowed the broken and forgotten, a grim zone populated by drifters, addicts, and the destitute. By day, it was loud with desperation. By night, it became something else entirely, predatory, hopeless, and dangerous. Men began turning up dead. They were found slumped in alleys and sprawled in doorways, their throats cut so deeply they were nearly decapitated. Their bodies were often staged, sometimes surrounded by strange symbols drawn in chalk or smeared in blood. It wasn't just the brutality, it was the precision. These weren't the chaotic killings of drunken brawls or robbery gone wrong. These were ritualistic, purposeful. Initially, the deaths barely made the news. These were the city's forgotten. Homeless men with no families and no one looking for them. The police were overwhelmed, the press uninterested. But as the killings continued, a horrifying realization began to spread. Someone was targeting the vulnerable. Someone was hunting. Whispers circulated through Skid Row. Stories passed from shelter to alleyway. There was a man out there, a quiet, strange man who offered drinks or prayers or conversation. And then he would strike. That man would eventually be known by name, Vaughn Greenwood. But before the world knew him as the Skid Row Slasher, Los Angeles had to learn that monsters didn't just hide in shadows. Sometimes they walked calmly beside you. Vaughn Greenwood was born in 1944 in Pennsylvania, under circumstances that offered little chance for stability. He was abandoned by both parents early in life and placed into a series of foster homes. These homes varied. Some were crowded, others neglectful, but none of them offered what Greenwood needed: structure, love, or consistent guidance. He was a ghost, even as a child, drifting through the system. In each new placement, Greenwood showed signs of emotional detachment. He didn't bond with caregivers or peers. He was quiet, not shy, but withdrawn, as if watching the world through glass. By adolescence, his behavior had escalated. Truancy turned into petty theft into breaking and entering. He began disappearing for days at a time, wandering city streets, sleeping in bus stations and alleyways. His criminal record grew as his sense of identity dissolved. Teachers and social workers described him as vacant, odd, and deeply troubled. Some suspected deeper mental health issues, but Greenwood never received proper evaluation or treatment. The 1950s and 60s weren't known for their mental health interventions, especially for young black boys in the system. Vaughn Greenwood became a name in a file cabinet, passed along from institution to institution. By the time he reached adulthood, Greenwood had no real connections. He had moved from Pennsylvania to Detroit and eventually to Chicago, always chasing nothing, always fading into the cracks. In the mid-1960s, Greenwood landed in Chicago. It didn't take long for him to draw police attention. One night, seemingly without provocation, he attacked a man with a broken bottle in an alley behind a liquor store. The victim survived, and Greenwood was arrested for assault. During his evaluation, psychologists noted Greenwood's erratic behavior. He rambled about purging evil, about seeing things others couldn't see. But they also observed that he wasn't incoherent. He was calculating. Despite these red flags, Greenwood wasn't committed. He served a short stint in prison, then disappeared from the public eye. In truth, he resurfaced in Los Angeles quietly. There were no records of his move. He simply showed up in Skid Row, blending in, observing, waiting. He had found a hunting ground rich with opportunity and devoid of oversight. The first known victim appeared in 1964. A man was found in a narrow alley, his throat slashed so deeply it was nearly severed. No ID, no witnesses. Near the body, a small cup filled with what appeared to be fresh human blood. Police chalked it up to another transient-on-transient crime and filed it away unsolved. Months later, another body surfaced. Same M.O., another throat slashed, another blood-filled container. But then, nothing. The killings stopped as abruptly as they began. It was as though the killer had vanished, evaporated into the haze of city smog. What no one knew was that Greenwood had been arrested again, this time for burglary, and sent to prison. The streets were safe, but only temporarily. When Greenwood was released from prison in the early 1970s, he didn't make any effort to start over. He didn't apply for jobs or seek out family. Instead, he returned to Los Angeles. He returned to Skid Row. The city had changed in his absence. More development, more surveillance, but Skid Row remained much the same. It was still a place where the forgotten huddled together, unseen by the rest of the world, and it was still a place where Greenwood could hide. Between December 1974 and February 1975, Greenwood unleashed a brutal wave of murders. 11 men were killed in just a few weeks, more than all his previous known victims combined. And this time, the scenes were even more grotesque. The bodies were found posed deliberately. One victim slouched against a dumpster with his eyes forced open. Another sprawled in a doorway with strange markings carved into his chest. These weren't sloppy attacks. The killings were precise, and there was evidence of post-mortem manipulation. Some victims appeared to have been washed. Others had ritualistic symbols smeared on their skin or drawn nearby in blood. In a few cases, candles were found burning beside the bodies. Investigators initially suspected a cult, some underground sacrificial group. But those theories faded as evidence pointed to a lone operator. Some victims had been drained of blood and posed in a way that mimicked ceremonial sacrifice. It was almost as if Greenwood had developed a system, his own twisted ritual. The media began to pick up on the killings and fear started to take hold. Local headlines referred to a phantom killer haunting Skid Row. But the police had nothing concrete, no name, no suspect, no end in sight. Then came a break. One man survived. The break investigators needed came in February 1975, when Vaughn Greenwood attempted to kill 64-year-old William Graham. Graham survived the attack and gave police a detailed description of the suspect. Detectives immediately linked the assault to the recent killings based on method, timing, and location. When they arrested Greenwood days later, what they found in his possession was chilling. He carried a knife, a vial of what appeared to be human blood, and an address book filled with cryptic symbols. He was also wearing clothing stained with blood, but the true horror was uncovered during a search of the house where Greenwood had been staying. Inside the home, investigators discovered what could only be described as a ritual altar. There were candles, human hair, dried blood on cloth, and pages torn from occult books scattered around the room. Police had suspected a religious or ritualistic component, but this confirmed their worst fears. Greenwood was performing his own dark ceremonies. Blood-stained journals found in the home outlined Greenwood's belief in gaining power through bloodletting and sacrifice. He wrote about awakening the essence through ritual. To the investigators, this was more than murder. It was a glimpse into the mind of someone who believed he was practicing dark magic through violence. Greenwood's trial began in 1977, and the courtroom was stunned by the details. 11 murder charges, 1 attempted murder, evidence of ritualistic practice. It was one of the most gruesome cases Los Angeles had ever seen. The prosecution presented their case methodically, detailing each victim's death and the symbolic elements discovered. Greenwood's journal was key. His own words painted the picture of a methodical and ritual-driven killer. The defense tried to argue for insanity, claiming Greenwood suffered from severe mental illness. Psychiatrists described his fixation on blood and symbols, his obsession with power rituals, and his lack of remorse. But the jury didn't buy it. They found Greenwood competent to stand trial, stating his methods showed planning and premeditation, not delusion. After weeks of testimony and overwhelming evidence, Vaughn Greenwood was convicted on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Skid Row, there was finally relief, but also a haunting legacy. Greenwood was sent to California State Prison, where he remained largely silent and isolated. He never gave interviews. He never admitted guilt. To this day, no one knows how many people he truly killed. Vaughn Greenwood died in 2009 at the age of 63. His death brought little media attention, but in the years since, criminologists and forensic psychologists have studied his case extensively. He represents a rare type of killer, one who combines ritual, opportunism, and prolonged planning across multiple years and geographies. Greenwood's crimes forced the LAPD to reconsider how seriously they took deaths among the homeless. It sparked conversations around the vulnerability of Skid Row and the failure of society to protect its most at-risk citizens. His killings also exposed how long someone could operate in plain sight if their victims were invisible to the broader public. Today, Skid Row still exists. So do predators, but law enforcement and outreach services are better connected now, in part because of the lessons learned from the Skid Row slasher. His case remains a disturbing reminder of what can happen when the unseen are forgotten, and when a predator learns how to walk among them. As the final chapter of Vaughn Greenwood's twisted legacy fades, we're left with one haunting truth. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it blends in, hidden among the forgotten, preying on the vulnerable while society looks the other way. The Skid Row slasher didn't just expose a murderer, he exposed a failure of the system, a failure to protect those deemed disposable, a failure to connect the dots, and a failure to see the warning signs until it was too late. Greenwood is gone, but the scars he left behind remain etched in the alleys of Skid Row and in the memories of a city that learned the hard way what happens when the marginalized are left defenseless. If you found this documentary insightful and disturbing, please consider liking, sharing, and please subscribe to our channel. It helps bring more awareness to stories that deserve to be remembered and victims who deserve justice, even decades later. It also helps us to keep bringing you authentic, true crime content. Remember to stay safe, stay aware, and remember, the most dangerous monsters are often the ones we never see coming. Thanks for watching and see you at the next video.